On today's Pedone My Take, we are going to be joined by the Office's Bob Vance. That's right. Hollywood actor Robert Schaffer is going to join the show. We're going to celebrate the Browns bye week the right way. I know it's in a stressful time in the world right now with the presidential election and everything going on in the world. We're going to leave that all out of it, and we're going to talk to Bob Vance. We're going to get into some Browns bye week grades and break down where the Cleveland Browns are at this current moment, halfway through the regular season, give out some NFL midseason awards, and after all of that, we're going to preview week 9 of the NFL season. But first, Pedone My Take is brought to you by my good friends at dugoutmugs.com. The World Series of Baseball is over, and as you saw, the LA Dodgers are World Series champions, but the Cleveland Indians are making moves, so my guys at Dugout Mugs are here to help you celebrate the MLB offseason. Even if you hate the Dodgers and you're upset with those Tribe moves, visit dugoutmugs.com/Pedone, and you're going to get a free Cleveland Indians knob shot, a perfect little shot glass, hollowed out a real knob of a baseball bat and turned into a shot glass for free. All you have to do is pay that shipping and handling, help you get through the MLB offseason together. While you're there, check out all the great beer mugs and shortstop whiskey glasses to watch your favorite team ace this offseason. Get your free knob shot, though, today to get you started at dugoutmugs.com/Pedone. That's dugoutmugs.com/my last name Pedone to get your free knob shot. So we have Bob Vance coming up at about 8:20. I'm going to hang to my promise there. Bob Vance will join the show at around 8:20, possibly a few minutes earlier. But the Browns are 5-3, and first, before we get to Bob Vance, we got to talk Browns, right? That's who we are. This is a Cleveland Browns town, and it was ugly on Sunday, and it doesn't feel like this team is 5-3. I know Baker Mayfield has said that ad nauseum, but it's true. And it was an ugly loss to the Vegas Raiders, who came into town 3-3. As far as this game is concerned, I just feel like the Browns were out-toughed. And I know we could sit here today on Wednesday, 4 days after the game, and we could say, oh, well, it was bad weather, the Browns are banged up. Well, listen, this is Cleveland, Ohio, for one. This is the AFC North Division. There's going to be bad weather. The Browns lost that game up front. And I know you guys don't want to hear about the bad. So let's not harp on the bad, and let's look at the good. In the last 2 games that the Browns have played, Baker Mayfield has been the team's best player. And if you disagree with me, as always, tweet the show at Pedone My Take. Tweet me at NickPedone12 on this Wednesday evening. I thought Baker has played really well over the last 2 games, and he was plagued by drops in the loss to the Vegas Raiders, and some uncharacteristic drops at that. Jarvis Landry, with some troubles, just things that you don't expect. Obviously, they're without Odell Beckham Jr. at this point. But to me on Sunday, as I watched my favorite football team get out-toughed, outmanned, and it seemed like a West Coast team came to Cleveland and played a Cleveland brand of hard-nosed AFC North football. A dome team came from the West Coast and did that to the Browns. And their injuries aren't an excuse, but this is a team that looks like they needed the bye week. And I loved when the schedule came out and we played the schedule game, that the midseason bye, I thought that was going to play very well to the Browns' strengths in being a run-heavy team. Obviously, nobody projected Nick Chubb to go down with that MCL sprain, right? That was kind of a freak thing. But we knew that football is a game of injuries, right? We knew that there were going to be guys that got banged up here and there. But this, to me, when I look at it from top down, yes, that win would have been nice, and that loss sucked. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know that a loss to the Las Vegas Raiders means all that much for this team. To me, when I look at the schedule game, you still got to beat Pittsburgh, who's undefeated, and we'll talk about them at the end of the show when we whip around the NFL. You got to beat Baltimore, and all you have to do now is beat the teams that are in front of you. You're right. You've won 5 throughout the first 8. That's a really, really, really good thing. 5 out of the first 8. Had I given fans that when the schedule dropped, saying, hey, the Browns are going to win 5 of their first 8. And from whatever happens there happens, in a year with coronavirus that they've thankfully avoided, in a year with that expanded playoff spot, you're going to win 5 of 8. Okay, give me that. Those odds are in our favor. That's good. But the other good thing is you can only play who's in front of you, and the Browns have a favorable schedule ahead. And we've talked about that ad nauseum, but you come back from the bye with a healthy Nick Chubb, should be a healthy Wyatt Teller. We'll preview this game a little bit next week against the Houston Texans and what's left of Romeo Crennel. And I know that it's perfectly fair to be worried about this Browns defense. And I wanted to talk about trade deadline and everything like that after we get, through Bob Vance here at 8:15. But I feel like you play the Houston Texans, you play the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Philadelphia Eagles. You still have both New York teams on this schedule. Obviously, the 2 divisional games are going to be big, including, in my opinion, I think that Pittsburgh game in the last week of the year is going to be big. It's at home, it's going to be cold, and I think it could have seeding implications. But as I look at this team now, at the bye, despite fans being upset, I just can't be too down and out about this team. And we do have a comment here. It says every single receiver needs to get on the jugs machine for every single bye week. And I agree with that. Every single practice of this bye week, the team needs to get in there and be better. Obviously, they had the coronavirus scare a couple days ago before the trading deadline. But I think life as a Cleveland Browns fan, as we know it right now, is okay. And let's talk some trade deadline briefly before we bring in Bob Vance at 8:15 East Coast time here. Listen, I hear the frustration from Cleveland fans. I really do. You wanted Andrew Berry to make a move. I did too. That's the thing. I wanted to see Andrew Berry go into the deadline at 4 p.m. and make another Ronnie Harrison type deal where you give up a mid-round pick and get a younger guy that was in a bad, botched situation and get a little bit in return. I think that could have been a type move to really benefit the Browns, and they weren't able to pull that off. What I'm not going to do is write off this team or get way too upset like I saw some people do on Twitter before my Twitter just went all election this week. There was a lot of upset people, and I guess I just want to understand why. And we talked about this last week. I'll bring it up again quickly before Bob Vance comes on and joins us here. Listen, when the schedule came out, when Kevin Stefanski was hired, if we want to even back this thing up pre-draft, we looked at the roster and we said, we're not doing this again this year. That's what I said going into this season. We're not doing this again this year. Last year, we read our own press clippings. We were very excited as a fan base, and that's what fans are supposed to do. Freddie Kitchens let us down miserably. The expectations we didn't even come close to living up to. It was one of the most disappointing things as a sports fan that I've ever endured in my short career as a fan, in my short life as a fan, shorter career working in the media. It was a disappointment. So this year we weren't going to do that. And this year was supposed to be just a small step in the right direction. Let's see what Kevin Stefanski could do. Let's see if this Cleveland Browns team can become, 500. Let's see if they could have a winning season. Let's see if they could crack the wild card when the CBA was finalized and we found out that there was going to be an extra playoff spot this season. I get that it's so easy to be upset because I hear you, Browns fans. I wanted J.J. Watt. That would have been fun. I wanted Miles Jack. That would have been fun. And this defense needs guys like that. This defense is not in a pretty spot as we stand, today here on November 4th. I hear you, and here's what I advise you to do. Go on to Browns.com and look at that Cleveland Browns defensive depth chart. It's just not a very talented bunch. And I know Browns fans don't want to hear that, but there are so many holes in that defensive unit that 1 trade, 2 trade, 3 trades at the deadline, which is always unlikely in the NFL, much more likely in the NBA, that's not going to reshape the entire integrity and the entire core of the Browns defense. What the Browns defense is right now and you could feel free to disagree with me on this. As always, you could drop in the comments. What the Browns defense is right now is two guys, 95, 21, and hell, I'll even throw 33 in there. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Ronnie Harrison. Outside of those three core players, I'm not sure what the Browns have. I am sure what the Browns have, and it's a bunch of quality depth pieces, which that's not a bad thing. I think B.J. Goodson, I think Mac Wilson, those guys would be phenomenal linebackers in a situation where your starters were injured, in a situation where you might have had somebody fail a drug test or gets the flu, or, in this weird season, and who knows what next season will look like, tests positive for COVID-19. But those linebackers, Andrew Sendejo, Carl Joseph, Larry Ogunjobi, I'm willing to throw his name into that conversation at this point. I'm not sure that those type of guys, I know for a fact that those type of guys aren't starters on a team that's going to play in an AFC championship game. And that's not a bad thing, because back this conversation up to just about 2 minutes ago, the Browns this season were just supposed to be scratching the surface. We went from worst to first is what we were trying to do last season. And I so badly wish, in a weird type of tormented way, that Baker Mayfield's historic rookie season didn't happen, that the Odell trade didn't happen, that Nick Chubb didn't burst onto the scene like gangbusters and be an all-pro caliber running back. You know why? Because those things set us up for so much disappointment as fans, but we're taking steps in the right direction now, slowly. Everybody wanted it to be the Kansas City Chiefs overnight. Well, John Dorsey built that team. He had Kareem Hunt, who he brought here. He drafted Patrick Mahomes and now drafted Baker Mayfield, who should be doing what Mahomes is doing. I understand that. And we're going to get to Bob Vance here in about 30 seconds. I know that's what everybody's hanging on for, to see Mr. Vance from Vance Refrigeration. But just hear me out for 1 second. Rome wasn't built in one day. And to put that in NFL terms, the Kansas City Chiefs weren't built in one day. The Seattle Seahawks, the New England Patriots, these flash-in-the-pan type teams never work. And we witnessed that last year. In the NBA and the MLB, where there's no salary cap, and, the teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers could just buy players. In the NBA, where, blockbuster trades happen in the middle of the night, where free agency is such a big deal, and you have certain players on certain teams trying to form super teams in destination cities. In the NFL, life doesn't work like that. It's a process. Things need to be built up slowly. And after the deadline, I was disappointed, and I tweeted, let's not call for Andrew Berry's job. Let's relax, because the arrow on this Browns team still trends upward. And if you don't think that arrow does, drop that below, because I want to hear from you. Do you think the Browns on November 4th, do you think the Browns are still trending upwards? Because I do. So without further ado, I know this is the act that everyone is waiting for. Heck, this is what I'm waiting for. I'm a huge fan of The Office. I've loved the show, and Bob Vance was grateful enough to come on and join us tonight. So without further ado, joining us now from Los Angeles, California, is Robert Schaffer. You might know him best from his role on NBC's The Office, where he played Bob Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration. Alrighty, so joining me now on the show, super fun guest for us today. We're joined by Bob Schaffer, also known as Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration. My first question for you, Bob, what line of work you in, my friend?
I'm in the keeping it cool business, baby.
Love to hear it. I like to think I'm in the keeping it cool business as well, too. Just we do it a little bit different ways. The Office is a huge show now, and it feels like it has been for a really long time. At the time that you guys were recording it, did you know that it would ever get quite this big?
Of course not. It's never happened before in the history of television, what's happened with this show. I mean, it's a phenomenon. Like you said, it's bigger now when it's off than when it was on. I mean, right. When has that ever happened? Thank you, Netflix. You know, the audience changed when we were on the air on NBC. Our typical demographic was 30 to 40-year-olds with household incomes of $100,000 plus, which is why NBC loved it, because they bought all the goodies from NBCstore.com, where you can go get your VANCE refrigeration gear. Please go get some. The hoodie, and also I love the travel mug. I should have brought it with me. Now the demographic is 11, 12, 13-year-olds. I went to Scranton a couple years ago to throw out a pitch at the Rail Riders game. That's the New York Yankees AAA farm club. And somehow they talked me into a dunk tank, which I'll never do again, because these kids were ringers. I kept hitting that water. It was, it was cold and rainy too. And so I was signing autographs for 6 innings, sitting at a table, and the whole line was kids. They were 11, 12, 13 years old, and they would walk up and hand me these DVDs and, pictures and whatnot, and say, I'm binge watching it for the 15th time. And I'm like, huh? What?
Hey, guilty charge there.
The devotion to the series is obviously, probably the Star Trek enthusiasts, they laid claim to this territory first. So it's not, when I said it's unparalleled, it is in modern television history.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take back to the infancy of the show. A lot of people don't know that Phyllis was a casting director for the show. That was her role behind the scenes. What was the callback process like for The Office? And take me through that day where you got the role.
It's a funny story. When I read for the part, I'd seen a couple of the first episodes. It was written up in the LA Times calendar section, which, if you're in the business, you have to read that every day. And so I read about it, and I thought, well, let me watch this. And it was weird. I was like, what is this? The mockumentary style threw everybody at first, right?
Right, for sure.
All the actors who came on the set were thrown by it until they made the adjustments. Even the pros, right? So I go to meet. I'm just happy to have the meeting. It's with Allison Jones, who's the premier comedy casting director in LA. I go there, and it's normally about a 15-minute drive for me to get to her office. Well, there's traffic everywhere. It takes me a half an hour. I'm late. I'm the last guy of the day. I didn't realize that it was Halloween. Halloween in Hollywood, it's, it makes Mardi Gras look like, a church festival. I mean, everybody's in costumes, because I finally figured it out. I'm like, oh, hell, it's Halloween. So I go running. I'm sweating. I'm the last guy. They're waiting for me. And I'm, who likes that? I mean, I'm a punctual person, so that adds stress. But anyway, I nail it. And I could tell that she liked it. So, but I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks. And then I get the call back. The callback took place at our studios over in Van Nuys. And the director of the episode was really the guy making the call there, although Phyllis was there. And there was some serious competition. I mean, this was a coveted part, even though the show was on unsteady footing at the time. So I read, and then they had me do all this improv. And I didn't really know who the character was. I had no idea. I mean, I was winging it. And as you always are in these things, right? Yeah. Hey, Bob, you see Michael. There's Michael looking at your car. React. Michael, what are you doing? What do you do with that? So Phyllis was in the room, and there was a lot of people in the shadows, as there always are.
Yeah.
And I think she made the call. I mean, it was her call. And the next morning, I went from the callback to being first up on the shot sheet the next morning.
A lot of people, one of the cringiest episodes, at least for me, you got Scott's Tots, and then you have Phyllis's wedding. You talk about some of the improv with Michael. Bob Vance was not a big fan of Michael Scott. What was it like working with Steve Carell? Because he's obviously hilarious. He was one of the guys that really made the show, what it is today. What was that like for you?
Listen, I'm a huge fan, right? I mean, people always ask me about that. How did you not laugh? Well, because Bob doesn't find Michael Scott the least bit funny.
Right.
So, he would make me snicker every now and then. I mean, speaking of Phyllis's wedding, one of the deleted scenes that ended up on the outtake reel was him. There's a fart joke. We do a fart joke, and he says the word pungent. Well, every time he says the word pungent, he loses it. He just breaks up. He can't say the word. This goes on for about a half an hour. I mean, every time he says it, he loses it. So now everybody's laughing, and I can hear all the producers and director. Everybody was down to monitors it was 2-story deal we were at there, but I could hear them down at the monitors laughing. I was standing outside the door, and I'm like, "Do not laugh. Do not laugh." Because again, there were a few times he got me, but not really. He never broke me. That's the first intros when Bob Vance comes in. It's Bob Vance Refrigeration, the famous lines.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The Ryan broke on that first take. I nailed him. I mean, he didn't make it. So it's famous because he fell apart. But I just hit him with such big energy. They weren't expecting it because there were the 3 kings of drolls standing there waiting for me. Stanley, Kevin, and Ryan. I mean, come on. What are you going to do? So my thought was, I'm coming in. I'm going to hit these guys really hard with big energy. They're not going to know what hit them. Because Bob is a super salesman, is what Bob Vance is. I mean, That's all he's doing. I mean, it's not that complicated. All these people, all these fans have all these silly theories, and there's Scranton Strangler and the mob. The writers had some. They wrote some off-screen jokes about Bob that didn't really. In my mind, I was never playing any of that stuff.
Yeah, you talk about some of those outtakes. Some of those have made their way to the internet, where NBC kind of splices up the best of and stuff like that. You talk about the deleted scene from Phyllis's wedding, the classic Bob Vance Refrigeration handshake scene. Is there a moment for you that's kind of an underrated moment that really, when you sit back and you watch the show, it's like, damn, that is really funny?
Well, there's a bunch. All of them are. I mean, the series is, every scene, every character, they're funny. Okay,
right.
All of them. And so it was an incredible array of talent. It used to actually, I remember thinking to myself, where there were some rapid fire exchanges and just being mesmerized by the talent. So look at all this talent. Any one of these people could have their own show. That's how good all these people are. I mean, so it's magical when you get a cast like that, and the writing is, also exemplary, because it's the writing in TV, right? People think, oh, you're improvising. No. You don't improv anything. You do it exactly as it's written. It's an NBC show. It's a network show. The network approves every line in the script before you shoot it. It's not a question of you just we'll just wing it. No, there's, the only improv that you saw was when John and Steve and Rain were trying to make each other laugh, and none of the other players took those liberties. I mean, you're not there to slow things down. You are there to move the machine along. So you don't blow takes. That's all I'm saying. A couple times I snuck a couple of improv lines in, but one time Greg Daniels was not happy with it whatsoever. He was like, could you just do what I wrote? And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, sure. yeah, let's do it. Let's do it right away. I'm ready.
That's crazy. There's always a lot of talk, and I feel like there will be for just the rest of time, of fans like myself that are just begging for a reboot. But as somebody that works in media, you're an actor, you've done plenty of other things outside of The Office. Could you explain to people kind of why that's so difficult to pull off, and if it were to happen, is Bob Vance in?
Well, of course. Look, there's a lot of speculation about it. I mean, and It's not coming from idle sources. It's not coming from the fans. This is from the network executives. They're trying to figure out how to do it. Well, it's easy. Here you go, NBC. It's called Vance Refrigeration. And Bob Vance hires a bunch of people that used to work at Dunder Mifflin. Boom. There you go. There's your series.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like
Yes,
that.
I solved the problem of how to reboot it right there. There you go.
Wow. I like that.
I solved the problem of how to reboot it right there. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. And, they almost got into that there when Sabre kind of links in with Dunder Mifflin. There you go. Sabre sends it to Vance Refrigeration. The rest is history. Something we talked about before we pressed record, heard through the grapevine, you're a lifelong Los Angeles Lakers fan. This show is based here in Cleveland. You guys got one of our own, LeBron James, in Hollywood. How you feeling, champ? Because the Lakers just won it all.
Well, it didn't feel like much of a championship, really, without the fans. It's nothing,
right.
That whole thing sucked. So, yeah, we'll take the win. It's number 17. It ties us with Boston. Good thing. I'm not the biggest LeBron fan. He's a little too mouthy for me. Everybody can have their opinion, but I don't really need your politics. Thank you very much. So let's move on.
Yeah, definitely. How is LeBron perceived in LA? Because LA is kind of a liberal place. A lot of people here in Cleveland had conspiracies like, oh, he left Cleveland. Not only are we a red state, the Cavs are owned by Dan Gilbert, who's a very Republican owner. He's kind of right-hand man with Donald Trump. Obviously, Lakers fans, though, are passionate. They're like, it's kind of about rings, not really about your politics. What's the perception of LeBron like?
I'm talking about basketball. LA's a Kobe town.
Right.
LA's a Magic Johnson town. You don't win one and the town falls in love with you in Lakerland. He still has to prove his bona fides. That was Anthony Davis that carried that team. To me, watching them play this year early in the season, I was astonished by Anthony Davis. That guy, that's who you want. If I was starting a franchise right now, that would be my first pick, would be Anthony Davis.
If you don't mind, tell people how'd you fall in love with the Lakers?
Well, I'm a West Virginian, so Jerry West was my guy when I was a kid growing up. The 6'4" shooting guard. His stats. People should go back and read Jerry West's stats. They'll make LeBron cry. Okay, this guy did it all. Averaged in the playoffs 44, 15, and 12. Astonishing stuff. And then when I moved to LA, of course, that's when Showtime began, and I had season seats one year, luckily at the Forum, and that was a fun year because you go to how many 50 games, 100 games, 60 games you attend, so you really feel like you're part of it. And I used to have dinner in Jerry Buss's box. I got to do all kinds of fun stuff. And so when they moved to Staples, it sort of changed. It changed a little bit. That arena was nowhere near the Forum.
Yeah, definitely. So much is made now of like basketball now versus basketball then. Is it more physical then? Obviously, you had the 90s, you had the Showtime Lakers before that. Now, a lot of complaining about the whistles, a lot of crying around the basket. Where does Bob Vance fall in all that?
Well, I'd put the Showtime Lakers up against any squad in history. Really. Seriously, because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, really people forget that this guy was unstoppable. He had the best shot ever. The 15-foot baseline skyhook with either hand. Come on. No one. I think he got blocked once or twice in his 20-year career. Come on. Nobody can stop that shot.
Bob Vance is a superstar on Cameo now. Tell people as you sign off here, where could people go check you out on Cameo and get a personal message from Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration?
I even do breakups. I did some breakups. So, if you got to deliver some bad news, like, it's not you, it's me. I'll do that for you, dudes. It's cowardly. You should do your own breakups. It's cameo.com, Bobby _Ray.
Yeah, you love to hear that. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining the show. It was definitely a lot of fun. Everybody loves The Office. Thanks so much.
Well, what's not to love? That's what she said.
There you go. Thanks so much, man.
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration, out.
Man, great stuff there from Bob Vance, Robert Schaffer from NBC's The Office. Fantastic stuff. Not a huge LeBron James guy is Bob Vance, thinking that if he would start his own franchise, Anthony Davis, not LeBron, would be the player that he would start said franchise with. Fantastic, hilarious stuff from Mr. Schaffer. Huge thanks to him for coming on the show. If you need a cameo, like he said, he's done breakups off of Cameo. So if you need a video from Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration, make sure to go check him out on there. Great stuff, weird stuff. Let's get into some bye week grades, huh? What do you say? How about we talk about some Browns on this fine Wednesday evening? So the Browns are halfway through their season, and I still don't feel like I have like a firm grasp on what this team is, on who they are. We know some things. We know that Kevin Stefanski has been cautious with Baker. He's kind of used him in a game manager type role. We know that the team is definitely run heavy, that they're going to utilize the tight ends, that they're going to pull the guards on the offensive line. And that's going to kind of be their identity there. I'm still looking for what this team's identity is on defense. For a second, we knew that the identity was creating turnovers. And I think that's a good identity to have, is a team that's able to, force turnovers. But what concerns me most about the Browns defense is what happens and where do they go when that that's well of turnovers dries up. And boy, did it dry up on Sunday in that 16-6 loss versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Something that bugged me that game, time of possession, Browns got murdered. Browns only had the ball on offense 6 times. So the defensive identity is in question. Where on offense, we kind of know the identity, but sticking to said identity, I would say it has been a little bit of a challenge in the 3 games that they lost. So let's go through the position groups and let's kind of rank where things stand with our favorite football team. So I feel as if when you do that, you need to start with the quarterback. Everything starts with Baker Mayfield. It's all on Baker Mayfield. He's been the only quarterback that we've seen this season outside of Case Keenum in garbage time when Kevin Stefanski was being cautious about Baker's ribs. So QB play. This is strictly Baker. I'm not going to throw in that quarter of Case. I'm going to give it a C+. And I know people are going to be like, Nick, that's harsh. The Browns are 5-3. He's progressed from last year. I'm with you. A C is a passing grade, barely. I'm giving him a C+. I think he's shown me enough that he's the guy in Cleveland, is Baker Mayfield. He's definitely my franchise quarterback. I'm not wavering. I don't want to see them look to the draft or towards free agency, first round, this, that, and the other. Baker Mayfield's my guy. He's shown me enough. Even in the losses, he's shown me that he can make the throws to keep the Browns involved in football games. And out of a third-year quarterback on his 4th head coach, that's all I can ask for. So I'm going to give Baker a C+, and the reason why it's not a B or it's not an A is because I think as a quarterback that was drafted based off of swagger, moxie, leadership, and overall winning alpha male mentality, you need to bring it in those games against Baltimore and in Pittsburgh. And those were the two bad games that Baker played this year. And versus Pittsburgh, his ribs looked at an all-time bad. The offensive line played their worst game of the season. So he gets some pass there. But on the same hand, the reason that you were drafted was because of that leadership, because of the winning mentality and the winning lifestyle almost, I'd be willing to say. I can't give Baker an A or a B. I will give him a C+, though, which is still good, still a passing grade. Baker's still my quarterback. He's still my guy. As we get through these bye week grades, you're going to see that I may be a little bit of a harsh grader on a team that's 5-3. As I go through these rapid fire, tweet the show, man. At Nick Pedone 12 is my Twitter. At Pedone My Take is the show, or just drop a comment below. What are your grades for the season so far? Quarterback Baker Mayfield has a C+, not bad. So the guys that helped Baker Mayfield out, and really probably the guys that got Baker Mayfield to a C+, to a passing grade after what I would consider a failing grade last season. What is the running back play? And I know Nick Chubb went down during the game in Dallas. We've seen a lot of Kareem Hunt. Kareem is a completely type of running back than Nick. He's a much better pass catcher. I don't think he runs through the tackles and hits the holes as quickly as Nick Chubb does. He's more of a side-to-side horizontal runner, where Chubb is more of a vertical threat. My running back play, though, I have to give an A. And that's an impressive A, facing the fact that your RB1 has been out for some games here and is coming back, thankfully, on schedule to be returning after the bye week. But my running back play just has to get an A because that's the identity. And when you finally identify an identity on your team, which technically this A should also be shared with Kevin Stefanski. I would like to give him some props here too, because he established the identity that they were going to run the ball, and they've been doing it at an extremely effective rate. They're up top of NFL in, average rush or average yards per rush. Kareem Hunt really dominates that category. In the passing game, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, when healthy, have brought a completely different variant to what Baker is able to do versus what Freddie tried to do last year. So my running back play, man, that has to get an A. Let's move to wide receivers. This was super hard for me because the Browns had, before the Beckham injury, one of the most dynamic receiver tandems in the NFL, with Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. Sprinkle Rashard Higgins or Kadarius Hodge into that 3 spot. That's decent, but I'm going to give this group a B, and I think it could be better. I think what damns this group from getting an A is the bitter, nasty taste that I have in my mouth from what happened in that Vegas Raiders game. That was the most drops that we've seen out of a Browns game since 2018 and Baker's rookie season. And Jarvis had 2. David Njoku, who I know isn't a receiver, he'll get clumped in with the tight ends, had a bad drop. It's just, they're doing well enough to get open, which is all I can ask. The whole get Odell involved thing really frustrated me. I'm glad that's no longer a thing, but I feel like the receivers are doing their job. Case in point, they get a B. Tight end play, I'm also going to give a B solely because Harrison Bryant has been such a pleasant surprise for this tight end room. And I don't think I could stress that enough. For as disappointing that David Njoku has been throughout his Browns career, and you have the drops, you have the complete inability and unwillingness to become a blocker out of David Njoku, Harrison Bryant has been the complete inverse of that. He's done everything that's been asked of him, and I just think he's kind of the model tight end. He does well in the blocking game. He's been a good pass catcher outside of the fumble. So that's what's going to give my tight end group a B for the Cleveland Browns. The one thing that's been kind of about the tight ends and about the offense in whole, I think Austin Hooper has been a little bit of a disappointment. When we signed Austin Hooper, I knew he wasn't George Kittle, Travis Kelce, I'd even the Saints tight end, those guys are top tier TE1 caliber guys. I thought Austin Hooper was going to be just a tier below those dudes. And I don't know if he has been. He got paid a lot of money to be serving as an average tight end throughout 8 games. He's only played 6 of them. He had that appendix surgery. So we still have 8 more games of Austin Hooper this year, and then a ton more throughout the rest of his Browns career because of that massive contract. But he has been a little bit of a letdown, at least to me. Offensive line play. Let's wrap up the offense with that before we get into the defense. And boy, do we have to get into the defense. The offensive line play is also going to get a B for me so far on the season because Jedrick Wills has played great in the games that they won and horribly in the 3 games that they have lost. His PFF graded out horribly against the Vegas Raiders. I don't know what it is, and I'm thankful that I don't know what it is. I suppressed that memory because he played bad against Vegas, and he was getting bullied around, and so was the entire offensive front. So they get a B for me solely because Baker was on his backside in the loss to Pittsburgh and in the loss to Baltimore. They did a much better job as a unit keeping him upright, even though it was a loss to the Raiders on Sunday. But to me, the offensive line is just a complete, vast overhaul improvement from what we saw last year with Freddie Kitchens. And I don't think that can that can be said enough that they've done a fantastic job with those guys in Cleveland in getting that group overhauled, bringing in Jedrick Wills, bringing in Jack Conklin, the career resurgence of Wyatt Teller that I'm really looking forward to seeing after the bye week. Can't say enough about that offensive line. Those big boys up front, they're getting the job done. Let's move to the defense, and let's just start ugly. Let's start ugly with this defense, and let's look at the safety. I have the safeties for the Cleveland Browns graded at a D going into tonight, and that's solely because Ronnie Harrison has played well. The dropped interceptions, though, have plagued him. That pick six that should have been against the Raiders would have been huge. He's dropped a couple picks so far in his Browns career. The safeties on this team have to play better. How much do we have to complain about Andrew Sendejo before we finally get some Sheldrick Redwine snaps? Why is Andrew Sendejo still playing 100% of defensive snaps for this Cleveland Browns defense? I'm super curious, and I need to see what Joe Woods does after the bye week with Sendejo's snap count, because he cannot be playing 100% of the snaps for this defense. And that's why the first defensive grade that I'm going to give out tonight goes to the safeties, and they're going to get a D. So let's go into the linebacker play, which has been equally bad. And this is tough, guys. I got to give these linebackers an F. Mac Wilson, we were high on him. He's bad. BJ Goodson, he's bad. Guys, I don't even want to talk about it. Malcolm Smith has surprised me. He's played incredibly well, but these linebackers are bad. As we round out the defense, I want to give the defensive line a B. Myles Garrett has done a fantastic job up front, forcing that football out. You can't say enough about him. Sheldon Richardson has played better this year than he did last year. And Olivier Vernon is making plays, especially in the run game. My only complaint with the defensive line is Larry Ogunjobi. Bit of a disappointment out of him so far this season, at least the way that I see it. So we go into cornerbacks. I'm going to give them a B as well, just because Denzel Ward, in my opinion, is exactly what you want out of a cover corner. That's all that I could say about them. So it's time for the NFL Whip. Guys, this show is moving right along. Huge thanks to Bob Vance for that. NFL Whip is presented by BigPlay.com. Big Play, your number one source for live interactive sports talk every night of the week. Give them a follow at BigPlay_com so you can watch shows like this one whenever, live every night of the week. We whip around the NFL in this segment, 15 minutes or less. Let's start off, no better way to do it, with Thursday Night Football, where this game is plagued by the coronavirus, and we knew that there were going to be games that fell into this category this season that were going to have a hard time getting their feet off the ground. And this seems to be the case. Even though it looks like it's happening, the Packers are going to travel to San Francisco. Both teams are without key players due to the coronavirus. Obviously, the 49ers are without a lot of players due to other injury. I think the Packers are just too good of a team this season. You've heard me talk about it all season long when we do this NFL Whip segment. I'm a believer in Aaron Rodgers. Even though they're without Aaron Jones, they're probably without Jamal Williams due to COVID-19 contact tracing. I just have to take the Packers in this one because of what Aaron Rodgers has showed me this season. I know the 49ers are at home, but Rodgers is from Cali. It's going to be warm weather. I just can't see how Green Bay loses this game. So let's get into the Sunday matchups. These are kind of boring, guys. A disappointing NFL week, in my opinion. Fantasy is going to be a weird week. If you have to have a week where you pick a Sunday with no Browns football on to do chores, this would be the week, because the other games that are on this slate aren't that polarizing. Let's head to Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Atlanta, where the Falcons host the Denver Broncos. I think Atlanta could get a win here. I don't know what's up with Denver, especially having to travel to Atlanta. They've been a Jekyll and Hyde team all season. They won last week. Drew Lock shows you really good things and then shows you really bad things. I don't know what to make of that defense yet. And Atlanta on the inverse is just a team that will do anything to lose. And this is just one of those games where the quarterback experience matters. So I'm going to pick the Falcons at home in this one. Really for no reason, just because I feel like Matt Ryan outplays Drew Lock, and then that's going to be the end game in this one. So let's move on. Let's head to Buffalo, where the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson's MVP candidacy continues against the Buffalo Bills. This will be the best of the 1 o'clock games. Obviously, the Bills have been good this year. Some people think they're a fool's gold type of 5-win team. I'm actually going to pick the Seahawks in this one on the road, just because the pick your poison receiver duo in Seattle for Russell Wilson of DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, we haven't seen a game yet where both of those guys get acclimated. Their running back situation should be slightly more balanced. This past week, they were only with DJ Dallas due to Chris Carson breaking his foot, Carlos Hyde dealing with injury. Some of those players should be back for Seattle this week. Not to mention that defense got a little bit of help. They signed Carlos Dunlap, who I expect to be active for this game. Give me Seattle on the road, beating Josh Allen and those Buffalo Bills in a tight, close game. Probably the best of the 1 o'clocks, though. So we head to Nissan Stadium in Nashville, where the Chicago Bears come to town against the Tennessee Titans. I'm a big Vrabel guy. I've talked about it on this show before, and I think Tennessee comes into this game completely pissed off. They were embarrassed by Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals last week. I think this is just revenge game written all over it. Listen, I know the Bears have 5 wins. They are the definition of fool's gold. They have no quarterback. Outside of Allen Robinson, they really have no offensive talent. Their defense is spotty at best. They're in a similar fashion to the Browns. When they can't force turnovers, I don't know what the Bears defense really is, especially with a banged up Khalil Mack. Give me the Titans at home, because I think they're going to go into that game playing angry. We head to Indianapolis, where this game has playoff implications for the AFC North, as the Baltimore Ravens and the Indianapolis Colts do battle. Obviously, the Colts, like the Browns, in a position to be dealing with, some of those wild card spots, obviously an extra one this season. Colts are at home. I think the Ravens get a comeback game here, and it's going to be close, and I so badly want to see the Colts win this game. The Ravens are going to be without Marlon Humphrey. There's somewhere 7, 8, 9 players that came into contact with Marlon Humphrey who tested positive for COVID-19. Interested to see how that situation plays out in Baltimore. I just think the Ravens are a little bit more talented than the Colts. The Browns were able to beat the Colts. I don't know if that bodes well for Indy, even though they're at home. Give me the Ravens on the road in that one, as bad as I kind of hate to do that. Where we head to Kansas City, where the reigning Super Bowl champs and Patty Mahomes Chiefs are going to host the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have hit a bit of a skid, but they get Christian McCaffrey back in a huge game. Unfortunately, it looks like the Chiefs are right back into Super Bowl stride. Mahomes looks good. Andy Reid looks good. That defense certainly looks good. I can't pick against the Chiefs. I can't pick against them in Arrowhead Stadium. Give me the Chiefs here, just because I think it's going to be too much Patty Mahomes. And no disrespect to Carolina, because as you guys know, if you watched the show before, I'm high on the Panthers. I like Matt Rule. I like the receiving core that they have there. Obviously, how can you be a fan of Christian McCaffrey's? But I think too much offensive firepower in this one. For the Chiefs, we head to the beautiful US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Vikings play host to the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Lions don't have to travel very far for this game. Vikings got a win last week against the Green Bay Packers, and I feel like this could be a little bit of a turn of the tide type of game for Mike Zimmer's Vikings. I projected at the beginning of the year, that, as did many, that Matt Patricia would be fired as the head coach of the Detroit Lions after this year. So I'm going to stand true to that, and I'm going to pick the Vikings at home. I think the Vikings have the momentum. They didn't blow up and abandon ship like many people expected them to at the deadline. Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris, still 2 key players on that defense that remain in Minnesota. After this deadline, they didn't trade Adam Thielen. They still have Justin Jefferson. I think Kirk Cousins is good enough to get the job done and win this game against the Detroit Lions, where we head to Washington, where the football team hosts the New York Giants. Do we have to talk about this game? I'm going to pick the Giants just because they impressed me. Really, they did on Monday Night Football. I thought Danny Dimes played good enough. Their defense certainly showed up and looked ready to play. Just for the sake of things, man, give me the Giants on the road, because they look like they're picking up steam. Joe Judge, I can't buy into him. Daniel Jones, I can't buy into him either. But I think New York could do enough to win this football game against the football team who just can't trust them either. That's the prison inmate game of the week. That's going to be on all the prison televisions. Where we head to Jacksonville, where the Houston Texans come to town, and the Jacksonville Jaguars definitely without Gardner Minshew for this game. And I'm actually going to pick the Jags here. I think Mike Glennon in Jacksonville, or if that's even the starter, they also were saying not to count out the rookie. I believe it'll be Mike Glennon. On Sunday, though, I'm going to pick the Jags in this one, just because Houston has to go to Florida. Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller, who knows what the morale of the Texans look like. Will Fuller was rumored and reported to really be close to going on the move to head to Green Bay to play with the Packers. I wonder what morale looks like in Houston, and a blow on the road to Jacksonville would not bode well for the Texans, who, of course, after the bye will play the Cleveland Browns. That's a game to keep your eye on if you're a Browns fan. I know it's a random game, but I'm going to be keeping my eye on that one. Where we head to the brand new SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, California, where the Los Angeles Chargers play host to the Las Vegas Raiders, two teams that have moved cities recently. Give me the Chargers in this one. They broke my heart last week. Justin Herbert, I was all aboard the hype train. I still am. Vegas beat the Browns, but I still don't think they're that good of a team. They had that Hunter Renfrow phantom touchdown where there wasn't conclusive evidence to see if that ball popped out. Josh Jacobs against the fraudulent Browns defense, and the defensive front ran wild. I don't think that happens against the Chargers, and I'm picking the Chargers to win this game at home, where we head to Jerry World. And we're heading to Jerry World because the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are undefeated, are going to play the Dallas Cowboys, possibly without Ben DiNucci. Obviously, they lose Dak. They lose Andy Dalton, concussion protocol, then gets COVID-19. Ben DiNucci plays horribly on Thursday Night Football in prime time. And they might start Garrett Gilbert, the former Browns backup, straight off the practice squad in Jerry World in front of their fans at home against the unbeaten Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, dear Lord. My heart is going to give out on me, but I have to pick the Steelers. I mean, come on. Dallas is a mess at the quarterback position. And I don't know what they're going to do because, they're just in for a rough year. They'll get a good pick. Maybe it'll be a 49ers type situation where you had a bad year where you only win 3 games, you draft Nick Bosa, next year you're in the Super Bowl. Maybe hold on to that type of hope, Dallas, because this game against the unbeaten Pittsburgh Steelers defense, if you're starting, Ben DiNucci, Garrett Gilbert, the other guy that you got in Dallas, that's bad. We head to Arizona, where the Cardinals host the Miami Dolphins. Tua looked good enough in his first game. Obviously, it helps when you get a defensive touchdown followed by an 88-yard punt return to the house. So that definitely gave the Dolphins a spark. I think Brian Flores is a great coach for Miami. I think Tua will work out there enough to prove that he's the guy for the Dolphins. Unfortunately for him in this game, I'm a bigger believer in Kyler Murray. It's his second year. The D-Hop connection has looked good. And Cliff Kingsbury has looked good in his second season, quite frankly. He's everything that we kind of hoped Freddie would be, and that offense seems to be clicking. So I'm going to take the Cardinals in that one in our last 425 spot, where we head to Sunday Night Football. Finally, we deal with some horrible games. Not horrible, but some unfavorable, not really a whole lot of fun type of games during the 4 o'clock and the 1 o'clock slates. We finally get blessed with Sunday Night Football, where the Saints travel to Tampa Bay and Brady hosts Breeze. Obviously, they're tied for that all-time touchdown record. I'm picking Brady at home in this one. Drew Brees is really good. I need to see him get the ball down the field. Michael Thomas could possibly be back for the Saints for this game. Something to keep your eye on. But I think Brady wins. I do. He's just too good. How could I pick against Tom? We're in this one. Monday Night Football. Man, poor Bill Belichick. 2-win team, New England Patriots, head to New York to play the Jets. Listen, the Jets blow. I don't know why they're on primetime. I don't know how that happened. I'm excited to watch Cam Newton and Bill Belichick and the Patriots on primetime. I feel like they've been given the short end of the stick this year. They're better than advertised, but I'm going to pick them in this game because, man, the Jets are just miserable, and I cannot pick them at all. So, yeah, give me the Patriots there. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. What a fun hour it has been. Blazed by. I truly hope that I was able to give you an escape from the world for a little bit. And regardless what happens on TV with the election, regardless of what happens, during the bye week with the Browns, what happens in the streets, whatever presidential election is picked, and all the chaos that ensues with that. One thing that I want you to take into tonight is you can only do your part. And that's where I'm at in this world, is if you love your neighbor as you love yourself, and if we treat everybody with the same kindness, the same respect, the same smile, a smile goes a long way, the world will be an improved place. Whatever happens in Washington, D.C., whatever happens all throughout the world, you can only do what you can do. And what you can do is just make your world a better place. Make your office a better place. Make your household a better place. That neighbor that you've seen outside and you haven't even waved to or said hello to, wave hello. Strike up a conversation about the Browns. Tell them that you listen to this fantastic podcast. You know what I mean? If you see somebody in the grocery store that drops something, pick it up for them. If somebody's short in the Starbucks line, pay for their coffee. We can only do what we could do to make this world a better place. And that's what I want to leave you with today. We're going to get through this together. Coronavirus, election, everything else. Super anxious time right now. I'm glad I played my part, and I hope I was able to entertain everyone tonight. This has been another episode of Pedone My Take, presented by BigPlay.com. If you haven't checked us out yet on demand, make sure to do that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're listening to us on there, smash that subscribe button. Leave a 5-star review. Write a nice comment. That helps us out so much. It helps us bring fantastic guests like Bob Vance. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. As Chief of Staff Callie Brownson said for the Browns, it's not about how many breaths you take throughout your life. It's about the amount of moments in life that take your breaths away. Go do something fun. Love you guys so much. Bye.